One thing is about sport itself. I mean, I had this debate all the way through my time in government where I used to try and kind of fight the system in a way to say that sport shouldn't be an add-on to policy. Sport is actually mainstream. I mean, what used to happen when you would have these discussions sitting around the cabinet table is that people would say, right, well, let's deal with the really serious issues, what's going on in the world, the economy and health and education and so on. And then, okay, now we can relax and talk about sport. And I would say to people, actually, how we deal with sport is a absolutely mainstream part of what makes an effective society today. And one of the things that motivated us to go for the Olympics was to try and showcase the power of sport. And the reason I'm an enthusiastic supporter of beyond sport is to show how it can change people's lives, not just give people entertainment.
When you talk about dedication to the sport, being in the gym every day from the age of 12 because when he first walked in, it was just a fluke. He'd lost his bike, somebody had stolen it. He got brought in by a local policeman who said, come in and learn how to fight. He went in, he really didn't, have any skill at that time, but he learned it. And by God's gift, he had the gift to box. So it took a long time for him to do that and going through the amateurs. So the dedication was there, which he has shown throughout his career as well. Respect for others. Ever since I've known this man, since the age of 6, Muhammad has always had a respect for people and the people around him, especially for those who unfortunately did not have the means to do for themselves. In other cultures, he traveled quite a bit. He's probably one of the first athletes, American athletes, to travel the world and to take his sport to other places, other countries, and to learn about other cultures. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's one of the most well-loved individuals on this planet, is because he had such respect for other people wherever he went.
After the World Cup, I realized how big it was. Even today, this morning, when I arrive and you get off the plane, people tell you where they were and what happened and how it changed the nation. It was incredibly powerful. But we were young kids, naive kids. We were, I would love to have been sitting here telling you that we knew it was more important and it was for the whole of South Africa and it would unite a nation and it would give us a chance. No, we were there to win. But then we had this unbelievable leader that realized the power of sport and embracing an Afrikaans community. Now, I'll finish off with maybe just 2 stories. In the final, we were in the changing room waiting to run out to play the biggest game you're ever going to play in. And the athletes that are arriving in London, their game will be when the whistle blows. So it's incredibly nervous, you're tense, you're scared, you're excited. And there was a knock on the door, and the door opened, and in walked Madiba, and he wore a springbok on his heart. Now the significance of that only struck me much later, because of the symbol of apartheid, the springboks. But he came there and he wore a springbok jumper, and he just said, good luck, play well, and he turned around and my number was on his back. That was me, I stood there, I bit my lips, I wanted to cry, I was so proud. And we went into full time, played an awesome All Black side, and we had to go into extra time. Ironically, always after the fact, the stadium was filled 99% with Afrikaans supporters, white males predominantly. They sang Shosholoza, which is an Indebele song the mine workers used to sing when they were working. And it's just mind-boggling, how did this happen? He had such an effect when he walked out in the springbok jumper that by doing that, by being selfless and being such a visionary, the World Cup became far more than just a World Cup. But I only realized it much later.
The Football Foundation came along, a big investment between government and the Premier League and the Football Association, putting 60 million into facilities. And then sort of 12 years ago, we really started to get involved centrally at the Premier League in trying to bring some cohesion to all these community schemes and the community programs. And so from a small acorn, 30 years ago, this huge oak tree of activity, and it's a huge oak tree now, of community activity, both at club level, aggregated across the Premier League, and now, of course, internationally. And we are now replicating our programs, the programs that work here, we are now taking and replicating abroad. And so we keep to themes. Social cohesion is the first theme, health, education, Actually, participation, although it's our fourth theme, I'm not suggesting it's last, but in some ways it is. Because I think sport can achieve many things without anybody actually necessarily kicking a football in our case. So it doesn't necessarily start with people playing football. It starts with using the power of sport and the power of football to influence people's lives in terms of those things, as I say, themes of cohesion, education and health. And then, as I say, if participation naturally comes along as well, but it's not necessarily the most important pillar of those four. And often where you see inspirational coaching and where you see good coaching provision and where you see a facility, you can actually see some grassroots sport development. But it's very, very hard for a whole load of social reasons for kids just to congregate on a street corner and play something. And therefore, facility provision and coaching provision are the two fundamentals wherever you go in the world in terms of if you're trying to develop sporting activity at a grassroots level.
You see, for a lot of young people, sport is where they can learn how to get on with other people, have some sense of responsibility to other people, concepts of teamwork and so on. All these things which are dramatically important in how a society functions. Sport has almost a unique giving capacity in those areas. So I think there are two things that I think are really important. The first is, as I was saying earlier, that government mainstream this and work out how we can really get behind the enormous empowerment that sport can give. But the second thing is, how do we help support the organizations out there in the community? Not just the ones that are put together by very well-known people, but those grassroots sports activities that do an immense amount of good. And I've seen this whether it's in Israel and Palestine or in Africa or back in the northeast of England, where my own small sports foundation gets coaches and officials for grassroots sport there. And, there's a fantastic demand for it. So, I think we're at the right moment to consider now how government, civic society, and the major sporting organizations combine together most effectively, doing what each can do best in order to utilize this great power of sport. And, what I keep saying to people about the Olympics is it'll be great, it's going to be a great show, a great party, but it lasts a few weeks. The question is, how do you make sure that the impact then lasts for years after?
Lonnie, Elliott, Blair, Francois, Pienaar, Scudamore, thank you very, very much indeed.